Good afternoon. How fun is this? I'm listening to all of these wonderful presentations and I'm learning so much. And I'm hearing some themes as we go through all of these talks, so I hope you will hear some themes as I give my presentation. This is Maya Parrish. Maya was the publisher of the Arizona Republic newspaper, and they endorsed a Democrat for the first time in their 125-year history 2 years ago when they endorsed Hillary Clinton for president. And what's interesting about that is not the fact that they endorsed a Democrat, although that's interesting. What's interesting is that shortly after they did so, they started to receive death threats, invoking the name of Don Bolus, an individual who was a reporter for the Arizona Republic, who was murdered in a car bombing 40 years before. And the boys and girls who were delivering newspapers were spit on and called names. This is a building in San Francisco. It houses a law firm called Cooley LLP, where I was a law clerk years ago, and in which I have vivid memories of standing with my other associates and seeing them get these incredible projects. The one guy next door, Mark from Harvard, got to go to corporate closings, he got to go to trials, he got to go to deposition, and I'm sitting in my office writing memos and reading the California Corporate Code. And it finally dawned on me, maybe I should go ask him, Mark, why is it that you're getting all these really cool projects and I'm reading the California Code? And he said, looking at me incredulously, well, I ask. I just ask. This is a picture of my daughter's passport. When she was 13 years old, she and her best friend, we allowed them to travel alone to Brazil. I don't know what got into me to allow two little girls to travel to Brazil by themselves, but we did. They were going to visit her best friend's family. And when she was there, I was terrified for her that she was all by herself, and instead, she fell in love. She fell in love with the language and the colors and the culture and the food, so much so that she became a foreign exchange student in Argentina, and she traveled everywhere from Guatemala to Kenya and so many places that by the time she was 22 years old, she had filled every single page in her passport. Every single page. That's another story. This is the book Blink. And you're probably thinking now, why did she tell me these three stories? What do they have to do with each other? They have to do with role models. If any of you read the book Blink, it came out a number of years ago. It's a Malcolm Gladwell book, and the subtitle is The Power of Thinking Without Thinking, and his whole premise is that intuition or gut is really subliminal clues that we get, or maybe even conscious clues that we get, that help us to think before we actually realize we're thinking. And he gives the example of someone, a firefighter, who goes into a building and says, the floor is going to collapse, everybody out. And so everybody leaves, and yes, the floor collapses. And it's not because this person has a sixth sense, it's because they've been to so many fires that they can tell by the crackle of the fire, by the sound of the fire, by the look of the fire that the floor is about ready to collapse. So these are the messages that our brain takes in and that we learn over time. Actually, we may not even learn, we just respond to. So it may be a young woman who learns at a young age that you are polite and that you wait your turn and that you don't ask for what you need or want when you're in a corporate law firm in San Francisco. Or it may be someone who gets on a blog and says, I'm going to say something on this blog because everybody else is saying something on this blog that I would never say in front of my family. I would never say in front of my friends, or because it's anonymous, or I'm going to get on social media and I'm going to post things that I wouldn't have posted otherwise. The point is, I'm calling them role models, he calls them cues. The idea is that we have messages all around us that are affecting how we act, how we look, how we behave, and what we do. It's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on LinkedIn. It's the people that we choose to be with, it's the people that we spend time with, it's the neighbors that we spend time with as well. I remember when I was lieutenant governor, and Adrian Smith at the time, who's now the 3rd District Congressman, was was a state senator, and we had opposing views on an issue. And so Adrian and I sat down together, and we literally spent several hours trying to figure out how it is that we could reach an agreement. Well, we didn't reach an agreement, but what we did determine was that we both had core sets of value that we strongly believed in, and we respected each other for the opinions that we took. I also like to think about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Antonin Scalia, who you may or may not know were very, very good friends. And he was as far to the right as she is to the left, or is to the left. But they figured out a way to work together. They figured out a way that they could become friends. And they shared this incredible love for the opera, and they spent every New Year's together. And what they determined was that they're okay. And the Pew Foundation came out with this report about 18 months ago that says our country is more divided than it's ever been since the 1800s, and that 54% of Democrats are afraid of Republicans, and over 50% of Republicans don't respect Democrats. If I have a neighbor that I like and I find out that they're a member of another political party, you know what? I don't like them anymore. It's actually shown in the data. And if I have friends from other political parties, I find out that they're actually okay, that maybe they are okay people. The point is, these are the cues that we get. We end up having people that we don't associate with because we're afraid of them or we don't respect them. And when we take time to do that, we find out that maybe they're okay. Maybe subconsciously, I can spend time with that person. So I started out with talking about my daughter and her passport. And I want to go back to the fact that her role model when she traveled was the world. She was able to see that there were these incredible cultures out there. Or when she was in an airport, there might be 2 or 3 languages that were spoken, and all the signs would have 2 or 3 languages in it, and it was just fine. And she found out that in Nicaragua, the women in Nicaragua didn't understand about nutrition. So they weren't able to eat well or teach their children how to eat well because they had no cues, they had no role models. And she learned that the kids that were in inner city Chicago didn't go home to two-parent families, had no one telling them they could or should go to college, and had no idea about the world that existed out there. We get cues from the people we choose to be with. We get cues from the places we're able to go, the risks we're able to take, and we get cues and role models from the opportunities that we take along the way. So my challenge to you at the end of this is to pay attention to the cues that are around you. And I'll tell you one last story. Whenever I see, anyone who knows me knows I love kids, and whenever I see a little girl, I always walk up to her and I say, "Oh, you're so cute. I love your hair. Isn't that a pretty dress? Look at those cute shoes." And my daughters have told me I have to stop. I have to stop doing that. And the reason is I am training this little girl subliminally to think that what's important to her is her appearance. It's how she looks. And I'm trying really hard to say, "You look really smart," or "Boy, you run fast. I bet you're a good athlete." I'm trying very hard to change the role models. So think about the cues you get, and think about the cues you give, and that's because we are all role models. Thank you.